welcome to Games Today. This is your host, the RPGgoddess. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing more Deltarune and Undertale theory crafting. Yay! Now this is a theory I've been floating around in my head for quite some time, and I don't think I'm the only person per se that has thought of this, but I've noticed that there really aren't any other videos on YouTube about it, and it's just such an interesting idea that I wanted to share with you all and get it out of my head. It's probably going to be wrong, but I don't care. So, what is this grand theory I have to share? Well, basically I think that Deltarune is, in its purest and simplest form, a prequel to Undertale. And I have a lot of reasons as for why I say that. But we're going to start at the very beginning. So I've divided this, theory up into some sections, and we're going to start with section 1, the origins of monsters. So I'm sure if you play Undertale you're familiar with the story, but let's just quickly run it down in a brief summary. So you play as Frisk, and they are a human child who falls into the underground, which is the land of monsters. And you go on a journey to try and find your way out, and you can play it in a neutral, genocide or pacifist fashion, but assuming you play it in a pacifist fashion, the goal of the game is to make friends and release the monsters from the underground, because they were sealed away there after they lost the war between humans and monsters and were sealed away underground. And in order to break that seal, they came up with a way, well, Asgore did, which was to steal the souls of 7 humans. And with that power, they would have the power to destroy the barrier that keeps them trapped underground. Now, we all know that story well and good, but talking about Deltarune, is it just me, or does the prophecy and the story of this game seem kind of similar? I mean, in Deltarune we have a story that is not yet complete, so this is all just speculation, but from what we know so far, there are these dark fountains that are appearing, and if too many appear, there's going to be an imbalance in light and dark, which will lead to the roaring, and we're going on journeys to try and seal the fountains. That's basically it in a nutshell. But as we have learned in chapter 2 from Rouse's little speech about the roaring, we know the roaring is going to be very, very bad, and that will happen if too many dark fountains are open and that balance between light and dark is out of whack, and there is too much dark and not enough light, I guess. So at some point the roaring is probably going to happen. We're all expecting that, I would dare say. And so with that in mind, the end of the game is probably going to have the whole, coming of a head, things coming to a head with the roaring, and no doubt all the business with Chris and his soul and whether or not it's possessed by the player. That's all going to come to a head at some point or another, and that's probably going to be how this one goes without getting too far into it at this point. So you can already see some similarities, because the darkness view the lightness as gods, and the reason for this is because all darkness are ordinary objects in the light world. Through the power of the dark fountains, magic or whatever else, I'm not exactly sure, become alive in the dark world as darkness. And so to them, they view the lightness in the light in the world as gods, as their creators. But they have recently come to resent the lightness because they feel that they have been forgotten about, imprisoned almost. And is it just me, or is this sounding very familiar to the story of Undertale? Is it just me? I don't know. To me it does. And the reason I say this is what we're going to get into for the next part. The roaring and the imbalance of light and dark. like I said, I think eventually there will come a tipping point and the Titans will come and all sorts of havoc is going to be wreaked on the world that we're going to have to save. But let's get more into the origins of the monsters. So, why do I think this? Well, I think all monsters in Undertale were originally darkness, and eventually, as a result of the roaring happening, they are going to leave the dark world and come to the light in the world. Whether all of them come, or some, I don't know. But I reckon at some point they're going to come into the light in the world and live there. And if that does happen, then over time it would make sense that they would breed with the Lighteners. And the Lighteners in this, universe all have a soul from what we know, and all have determination, unlike the rules which were different in Undertale, whereas the rules were that a human had a soul that was very, very powerful, and monsters also had a soul, but their soul was different and not as powerful as a human soul. We don't know exactly why, because monsters are made of different stuff like magic and things compared to that of humans, I guess, and also humans apparently can't use magic, but who knows, maybe they could at one point, because we do see that cutscene at the very beginning of Undertale where there appears to be a human mage or sorcerer or wizard of some kind, presumably making that spell. So perhaps the humans lost it at some point, I don't know, and I don't know exactly why. Haven't got that far into the theory. But so I'm making the assumption here that over time the Darkness are going to breed with the Lighteners, and as a result of a lot of time, breeding, mixed genetics, evolution, what have you, we will have wham bam thank you ma'am, modern day monsters of Undertale. Now, I hear a few of you saying that we know from Toby Fox himself, Deltarune is not a prequel. On the Deltarune official page, there is a FAQ Q&A section that you can read for yourself. I'll put a screenshot of it on the screen in a moment. It'll only appear for a second, so if you'd like to read it, feel free to go ahead and pause. But I'll read it out now. So it says, questions about the game. Question: how does this game relate to Undertale? Is it a sequel? Answer: please don't worry too much about that. Essentially, this is not the world of Undertale. If you completed Undertale, the ending and the world are as you left it. If everyone was happy there, the people in the Undertale world will still be happy. So please don't worry about those characters. In that world, it will remain untouched. To rephrase that, Deltarune's world is a different one, with different characters that have lived different lives. A whole new story will happen. I don't know what you call this kind of game. It's just a game you can play after you complete Undertale if you want to. That's all. So, Toby Fox doesn't outright say it's a sequel. He doesn't outright say it's a prequel, nor does he deny it. So, take from that what you will, but it's certainly not unlike our beloved Toby Fox to leave, important questions conveniently unanswered and many mysteries unsolved within his games. So, he probably just doesn't want us to know that if, in fact, this is what's really going on. But I did have an original section planned for this where I was going to list all of the instances in Undertale where the Deltarune appeared, but I decided to cut that because it would have been too time consuming and kind of waste time. But I just wanted to mention it quickly because there are in fact many, many instances, probably about 20 or 30 odd, where the Deltarune emblem appears in Undertale. And probably the most notable place is Gerson, who, for those who don't know, Gerson is a turtle who runs a shop, I believe in Waterfall in Undertale. Excuse me. Anyway, so Gerson tells us a little bit about the Deltarune because one of the dialogue options is to ask about that And again, I'll put a couple of screenshots on screen in a moment for those of you interested to read them for yourself. But basically what he says is that it is very old and that its original meaning has been lost to time, but that is the emblem or the symbol of the kingdom of monsters. So I guess it's kind of like the royal crest for monsters, or I don't know, something like that. But the fact remains that the logo for Deltarune, which is obviously something that we still don't know everything about, but you know, something that is very important to the story of Deltarune, has appeared in Undertale. And one of the few pieces of information we do know from Undertale is that it's old, so old that the original meaning has been lost to time and predates written history. So it's old, very, very old. That much we can take away. And again, this is just a theory, so don't get too, you know, worked up. I'm probably wrong, but I just thought it was an interesting point to bring up. I won't be going into a full in-depth analysis because Gaster in and of himself is a whole video of his own. So I'll be saving that for future videos. Okay, so Gaster used to be the royal scientist in Undertale before Alphys. His full name, we believe, is W.D. Gaster. The W.D. we presume stands for Wingdings Gaster, and we assume that because Papyrus and Sans are both named after fonts, and so it makes sense that Gaster might also be named after a font, especially when you consider notorious entry number 17, which is written in Wingdings, a font that uses symbols such as hands and things, which also connects back to the Riverman, who makes a reference sometimes about beware the man who talks in hands, and a lot of people assume that that is Gaster. So our man Gaster used to be the royal scientist before Alphys did, and in a normal playthrough you probably never even encounter Gaster because the game has what's called a fun valley, and this is a number that is automatically generated each time you play the game, and you have to get very lucky to get that right number in order for these scenes to even take place. But many players have come across these scenes, and you meet people known as the Gaster Followers, and they give us the very few bits of info that we have about Gaster, because we don't even know for sure what he looks like. But the best sprite we have of him, that many people assume to be him, kind of looks like a skeleton, which is like speculation that Gaster may be the grandfather or father of Sans and Papyrus. Anyway though, so Gaster used to be the royal scientist, and in the Tree Laboratory you have the entries that are pretty much all written by Alphys, except for number 17. There is an entry 17, I believe, but there is another entry 17 which is sort of hidden amongst the game's files, and I'll put an image of it on screen, but it basically says darker yet darker, photons reading negative. This next experiment seems very, very interesting. What do you two think? And we don't know who those two people are. It could have been Alphys, or it could have been Alphys and Sans, or Sans and Papyrus. We just don't really know. But we'll just read out a couple of screenshots that the Gaster Followers say, and again these will be on screen, but they'll only take a minute, so feel free to pause yourself if you would like. One follower says his brilliance was irreplaceable. Another says Alphys might work faster, but the old royal scientist W.D. Gaster, his brilliance was irreplaceable. One day he vanished without a trace. They say he shattered across time and space. How can I say so without fear? I'm holding a piece of him right here. Another Gaster follower says, it makes sense why why Astor took so long to hire a new royal scientist. After all, the old ones, Dr. Gaster, what an act to follow. They say he created the core. However, his life was cut short. One day, he fell into his creation and will Alphys end up the same way? That's another point. We know from this that Gaster was the one who created the core, not Alphys, and in the world of Undertale, he is dead. So, of course, like I said before, you will never meet him. But we could take away a few points there. We know that Gaster was the previous royal scientist, that he was obviously very smart, that he died, but is perhaps not actually dead because apparently he was split in, his soul or whatever was split in pieces across time and space. And so that leads me to why I think that a lot of what is going on behind the scenes with the night and what have you could have a lot to do with Gaster. Again, this whole video in and of itself. But we know from entry number 17 that he was working on an experiment, and when you take the photon readings negative line and the line about this next experiment seems very, very interesting. At the time, nobody really knew what that meant, but with the events of Deltarune in play, it could very well be referring to the Dark Fountains. So perhaps the whole world of Deltarune was an experiment of Gaster's, experiment that went wrong, and he got split across time and space and ended up there. Maybe it was deliberate, maybe it wasn't. We really just don't know. But it's all very, very interesting indeed. And that's about all on that point, but my final point I wanted to make, and again I'll provide a couple of screenshots in a moment, is when you are loading a save file, you will notice that if you choose to copy or delete a save file, you will get the following. So if you choose to copy a save file, and remember that in Deltarune you have 3 save files as opposed to the 1 save file in Undertale, and of course that made sense in Undertale, and it could just be that Toby Fox wanted to have 3 save files. There could be no more reason to it than that. But anyway, if you choose to copy a save file, it will say choose the target for reflection, and if you choose to erase a save file, when you select one, you will have in red text, then it will be destroyed, which, I don't know, seems a bit strange wording for, deleting a save file. Maybe the red is just to highlight the point of, are you sure you wanted to delete this save file, just to make certain that the player is sure of their decision. But the wording is almost as if, then it will be destroyed, like, are you sure you want to destroy it as well? Could be reading too much into it, but just thought that was an interesting point to end that section on. So that about brings us to the end of the video. But in terms of what is to come, I, like everybody else in the community, is extremely excited to see what will happen next. So excited that I almost wish I could have a time machine and skip forward into time to when the game comes out, because it's so dang interesting. As for what Chapter 3 and the following chapters will hold, I really don't know. I dare say the roaring will be coming, and whether or not Chris is possessed by the player or some other entity, that will no doubt have to come to a head, and we'll finally get some more info as to what's going on there. Hopefully we'll get some more hints as to who the knight might be, and also going by the ending sequence in which Chris created a dark fountain in the lounge room, and they took the time to turn the TV on and open the door, and also Toriel, we know, made a phone call to the police station. We don't know whether she spoke to Udine or Navstabuk, but it could be possible that those 2 characters may appear in the next chapter. We also have that festival coming, and judging by the fact that Toriel was in the room, I'm really hoping that she will be that chapter as well, assuming she was literally asleep when Chris went about their shenanigans, for whatever reason. But yeah, it all looks really intriguing, especially if the player decides to take a Genesis route. God, very, very interesting. I wonder what Tori will have to say about her darling little Chris getting up to all that nonsense. Or us, the player, I should say, getting up to all that nonsense. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little theory crafting session with myself. If you have enjoyed this video, then it would mean the absolute world to me if you could consider liking the video, giving it a comment, sharing with your friends if you're not already, and don't forget to turn on that notification bell so you never miss an upload. But I love you all, guys. This has been Games Today, and I'm your host, the RPGgoddess. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all next one. Bye, guys.